All right, the conversation is about to start,
and it has already started.
It has already started, Debola. It has really already started. But please listen to this background report on Jamb's recent decisions, which of course is aimed at shaping the educational sector and prepare Nigerians for another academic year. Our background report is put together by Ibrahim Belukunda.
The 2026 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, conducted by the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, has once again come under national scrutiny, generating familiar debates around fairness, access, and credibility. While many of the concerns being raised are not entirely new, they remain significant in shaping public perception of the examination process. This year, Jamb sustained its computer-based test, or CBT format, which has now become the standard mode of assessment nationwide. The 2026 edition largely follows the structure of recent years, though with some notable refinements. Early feedback points to a number of strengths. Candidates across several centers have reported improved system stability, with fewer incidents of system crashes compared to previous examinations. In addition, many CBT centers appear better equipped, helping to reduce delays and enhance the overall testing experience. There are also indications of major standardized questions, as well as faster processing and release of results, reinforcing confidence in the efficiency of the system. However, some challenges persist. A major concern among candidates is timely pressure, particularly in calculation-intensive subjects such as mathematics and physics. There are also reports of technical issues in some centers, including login delays and occasional system freezes, which can disrupt concentration during the examination. Overall, the 2026 UTME reflects a system that is increasingly driven by technology and has made measurable progress in curbing examination malpractice and improving administrative efficiency. Yet, issues relating to infrastructure gaps, transparency, and access inequality continue to pose significant challenges. So, what exactly stood out about the 2026 Jamb examination compared to previous years? How effective was the CBT system this time around? And to what extent have Jamb's anti-cheating measures delivered results? These are some of the key questions we will be examining today on Good Morning Nigeria as we welcome our guests to the studio.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim, for that background report. And we already have our guests in the studio, and I believe that they will prefer, answers to some of the issues that you have raised. Joining us here is Dr. Fabian Benjamin. He's the Director of Public Affairs and Protocol, Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, Jamb. Dr. Fabian, it's good to have you.
Good morning, and good morning, Nigeria.
Also, we have joining us here our regular Professor Andrew Haruna, Secretary General, Committee of Vice Chancellor of Nigeria. Prof, it's good to have you again.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning, Nigerians. Good morning, my dear.
Yes, sir.
All right, and also joining us here in the studio is Professor Dili Dogo, now University, and we're always glad to have you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right.
I think the Zoom guest is here to join us, so
yes.
Let's just kickstart with the director, yes. Dr. Benjamin, so that he can explain to us the reason, behind the retaining of 150 as the university cutoff mark for this admission. What's the single biggest change from this year's Jamb policy meeting that students and parents should know about?
Well, thank you very much. The policy meeting is an annual ritual where the stakeholders, when I mean stakeholders, the vice chancellors, provosts, and the rectors of polytechnics meet to determine the guidelines for the year's admission. And one of the issues that is always at the front burner is the issue of the minimum tolerable score. Not cutoff, because when you say cutoff, it sends a wrong impression. People begin to feel that, like somebody will call me and say, look, you say this year's cutoff is 150, my son scored 150, so and he wants to do medicine. Because cutoff in actual sense means that the person has met the minimum requirement and it should be admitted. But it's a tolerable admission score. Just like what the VC has said that last year, the Nile VC. In Nile, 75% of the candidates who were admitted into medicine scored 300 and above. And yet we had a minimum score of 140 last year. So it's just a minimum benchmark that nobody should go below. But institutions are at liberty to set their own benchmark, minimum benchmark. And even within the institution, programs, they can set different benchmark, minimum scores for different programs. For instance, medicine, engineering, and all these things. We have different set criteria for admission and stuff like that. It's not a determinant of quality or anything. It's just a minimum that, look, for instance, NMPC is recruiting and say, okay, if you have a first degree, that's the benchmark. No, anybody with a first degree should not apply. That's the essence of setting that kind of perimeter. But you have people with first class, you have people with second class upper apply, and then they will go in there and compete. Of course, if you have people, very good people with second class upper and first class upper, you may likely not even pick somebody with a first degree. So when institution will say 150 minimum, it doesn't mean that once somebody has, because the debate out there is that, oh, they are lowering, they are doing this and that. Don't forget that the UTME is not a major determinant of qualification for admission. The O level, as defined by the Arusha Convention, or what people call the Tanzanian Declaration or whatever, 5 minimum O level credits, including mathematics and English, as it applies to the course that the candidate wants to read, is what qualifies a candidate for admission. Don't forget, education is a global product. We are competing all over the world. If I want to go to London today to go and study, nobody will ask me of any Jamb or anything. The same thing, Ghana, Cameroon, here and there. But we are doing this because in most of these programs, especially those that are highly subscribed, we don't have enough spaces for this candidate to go in. And that is why this examination is conducted. If you look at the name Jamb, there's nothing about examination there. Examination became accidental. It's a vehicle to which we can create equity, fairness, transparency. If today we wake up and we have enough candidates going into medicine, engineering, and all this program, we may not even have any need for examination. You could see what the minister just did with the NC programs and the non-technological programs, ND and stuff like that, because of the lower level of subscription that those programs are having over the years.
You know, I like the fact. Sorry, I like the fact that you just pointed out something which we've always overlooked. There is no examination in Jamb.
Yes,
that's very important. But again, this issue of minimum tolerable marks or cutoff marks is always a very contentious issue, and I want to believe that parents and candidates are beginning to understand it. But before I even we look at the specifics of the outcomes of the policy meeting, I just would like you to enlighten us a bit about this policy meeting. You did say that this is a routine, is a ritual. Who are the critical stakeholders who come together to take these decisions, and are they binding on all tertiary institutions in Nigeria?
Well, you have to go back to understand the history of Jamb itself. Because I keep telling people, I say, look, if you don't understand the purpose of a thing, abuse is certainly inevitable. The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board was established by the then university. The tertiary institutions, they came together and they felt that, look, the growing number of applicants, number of applicants was increasing, and they need a body that will coordinate admission so that can take off certain pressure from them and also help the candidate instead of applying to so many institutions. In those days, you could apply to ABU, to UNN, to Ibadan, and all those things, and just pick a slot, denying other candidates of certain slots that other universities would have. It's possible to get admission in all those schools. So there were a lot of confusion. And the then institution, that's one mistake that people keep making. Jamb is not even a creation of government. The university came together to say, let us have a body that will coordinate this process for us. Just like if you look at this year's policy, you see that the Deputy Minister of Education from Sierra Leone was there with two powerful vice chancellors, because they want to understand, they want to establish something that looks like Jamb, because they too are experiencing what we had in the 1970s. The growing number of applicants is increasing, and they need a centralized system that will coordinate all those issues. Now, the policy meeting, because if you have a central system that coordinates a process, then there must be guidelines. There must be rules. There must be regulation. But of course, you won't just sit down and say you are the almighty or a dictator, and then you begin to dish out rules and guidelines and all those things. We act in collaboration with this institution. The institution, they have their own autonomy in area of admission. Ours is just to sit down and say, okay, you have defined this as a perimeter you have given to us. You must abide by it. The policy meeting that is chaired by the Honorable Minister of Education comes together with all the stakeholders. When I mean stakeholders, the vice chancellors, the provosts, the rectors, and others, that is regulatory body, NUC, NCC, MBT. They come together and say, okay, this is what should be for the admission for this particular year, for 2026.
Okay.
This is, the guidelines is being defined. You could see that the minister even went further to define make pronouncement on certain policy that will also shape the 2026 admission. And he also alluded to the fact that, look, based on what was done last year, certain waiver, the issue of mathematics for certain programs. For instance, you want to read Hausa language in university today, you don't need mathematics. Before, you must have a credit in mathematics. And unlike, if you go to London, you want to read Hausa or Arabic or CRA, you don't need mathematics. Mathematics has no any bearing in those programs. That has been waived. And for 2025 admission, we've shot from barely 700 candidates to over 1 million candidates because of some of those.
Yes, before again, you know, we get into all that. I know Demola is waiting to take the next
I just
question.
wanted to
Yes.
give us. I just wanted him to, throw more clarification concerning, the issue of admission of education students and the agriculture, those
Yes,
because it's like the minister is saying that, those who wants to read maybe education or agriculture do not need to go through Jamb.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Before you go, I know he wanted to come there, but just a follow up on this, the policy. Beyond the cutoff marks and the benchmarks, in terms of governance of the tertiary, level, how extensive is this meeting?
Well, it's very, very extensive because you see, even timelines are defined at the policy meeting. When to begin and when to end. You understand? And what to do and what not to do. For instance, there were pronouncement of how to do admission. It must be under through the central admission processing system. And any admission not accepted or approved on the central admission system is termed invalid. So these are little things that have been defined at policy meeting. To help the candidate, because we have a situation whereby you will say a candidate say, I've graduated and I can't go to NYSC because I don't have this, I don't have that. And these are issues that are meant to address such challenges and stuff like that. So the policy meeting is very extensive. It addresses almost all the gamut of admission in the tertiary and so on, and even things that does not border on admission. Because
like
before the minister comes on board, the registrar usually give analysis of last performance of the admission, the conduct of the exam, the performance of candidate, the performance of the General Admissions and Matriculation Board, to look at what we've done in the year past, and then to analyze and then see how we can make amends and put some cross on T's and dots on I's. Yeah. So it's very extensive. Okay. And then to answer your question, I must commend the minister for being very courageous. You see, a lot of us out there, we argue without really having the statistics of the issues on our hands. It's either we want the colleges of education to survive or we don't want them. That's the two way. If today we wake up and say, okay, we no longer want any college of education. But if they must exist, then we must do something for them to exist. It's just like somebody as a farmer, I produce 10 cartons of apple, and I take the apple to the market, and I say a carton is 100,000, and nobody buys. And then somebody comes and says, no, you're not doing it well. Why not make it 200,000? I must be stupid to listen to that person. A reasonable, rational decision that I should take is to see how I can bring the price. I can vary the price. I don't want to use the word lower, because once you use the word lower, people will want to challenge you. Their teachers, some people, NUT, all this, they say you're lowering standard. No. You look at the situation where you say, okay, instead of 100,000, let me make it 80,000 or 70,000 or 50,000 so that I can sell. As we speak today.
But actually, some people have used that word lower. Maybe that they lower, the entry,
I have said earlier that the UTME is not a major criteria to determine quality. It is just a selection examination. Okay. And the registrar will always say that, look, that Mr. President maybe had invited you to Villa with your family, and you have a large family, 10 members of your family, and the vehicle you have could only take 5. And you're thinking of what do I do to ensure that everybody feels satisfied, that it's not cheated. You say, okay, let's do an examination. You ask a question. You set an examination for members of your family, and the first person scored 5. You picked him. Up to the 5th person. The 5th person scored 1 over 10. In normal sense, somebody will say he has failed. But that is not the purpose of your examination. The purpose is that you want to create equity, fairness in selection. He has passed. He fills the slot for the last slot. And you move your vehicle to the Villa. That is what we are doing. Don't forget that the NC itself is a stepping certificate. You do NC, you move, just like what the minister have said now, that for now, once you get into NC, you continue from NC to 1st degree. Once you have the requirement, a 5 O-level credit, 4 O-level credit, including whatever mathematics, physics, depending on the program that you want to read. So there is nothing about lowering standard. Look, I told you earlier that we compete globally. If I have my 5 O-level credit today, I could go to any of this country in the world and pick up a program there without any UTME. It's only because your father is poor, that's why you are being subjected to that kind of argument. If your father is rich today, you don't need to go through all this. You could just fly to Ghana, fly to anywhere, pick up certificate, and come back to compete with somebody that has scored 100, 280, 300 in Nigeria.
So let's bring
I want Professor Haruna, you know, of course.
I think the guest, the Zoom guest is around, so you can just...
Okay, that's Professor Tanko Ishaya, the VC of University of Jos, the winning university, according to Jamb. Congratulations, first of all, Prof, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, viewers.
You must be a proud VC by now. We'll come back to you to share your joy with us and, you know, what you did to deserve Jamb's 500 million naira.
Half a billion.
Half a billion naira. Prof, we'll come back to you. So while you think about it, let's bring in the SecGen of the Vice Chancellors to weigh in. You know, I'm just wondering. He has given us the background of how Jamb was, you know, created by all the tertiary institutions. So it's a binding. I mean, decisions are binding on all universities. But the issue with lowering of, you know, admissible standard by Jamb and universities conducting their own, having their own, you know, standards again. Isn't it conflicting? I mean, what is the sense of having a lowering, you know, entry standard, and then you get to the university, you are told you cannot get admission? Does it make sense? Is it commonsensical?
It makes sense a lot of sense. But before I comment on that, I'm happy he hinted something which is central to the Committee of Vice Chancellors. Jamb is a creation of the Vice Chancellors, not a creation of government.
Yes.
Because this is important for me because that's what my job. You see, the Vice Chancellors saw the challenges in admission. And they came together and said, how do we address this? Like he mentioned, one candidate will have admission in Ahmadu Bello University, in Ibadan, in Maiduguri. And at that time, it was very, very difficult to handle that. So this one candidate will deny 2 spaces for candidates who qualify to be in admission. Now, the creation of Jamb is by the Vice Chancellors to address some of these issues. So this is very, very important.
But
so
even regardless, some universities, you know, turn down admissions from some, you know, candidates.
Well, you see, Jamb is just a regulatory body. You see, when there is a policy meeting of this nature, is to provide a direction so that there could be an ease of administering whatever you plan to do. That's what the policy meeting is all about. But now when Jamb can give you a minimum criteria, as he said, you cannot admit below that. Now, education is very liberal. You know, it's liberal, and you must compete. And this competition depends where you want to go. And when you have a figure, it doesn't mean that this figure, the candidate is less intelligent or he is brilliant enough to be. Each university has the right to put anything they want above that minimum standard set by Jamb. So people are not denied admission in most cases. Remember, we have 309 universities in Nigeria. And we have over 1.8, I think almost 2 million students.
How is that minimum mark calculated?
Well, they write Jamb exams, and they have other English, mathematics, and whatever. And the figures they get is what is total to give them an average of what this minimum standard is. And some will have 200, some will have 300. And based on this, you pick the ones you want based on the university's
the average. So, Dr. Fabian, so usually 150, because 150 has remained constant for a while.
No, what you see, sorry, sir. It's a matter of demand and supply. At the policy meeting, all institutions submit their minimum. and each institution submit a minimum based on subscription. For instance, if I have people, I look at what the number of candidates that have applied into my institution, and the highest person has 190. Of course, I won't say my minimum is 200. The whole people that apply to me, the highest person has 190. You must be a mad person to say your minimum is 200. You will not begin to think you are, by every standard, constrained to think of your minimum below 190. Then you go to an institution where, just like Nile VC said, that 70% of the candidates that were admitted into medicine in Nile last year scored 300 and above. And I can attest to that because I have a parent who has scored 300 and something, the child has scored 300 and something, and he's so apprehensive whether he could be admitted. That tells you the level of competition in that school. So it will be, there's no way that school will now begin to think of 150, 160, 180 for medicine. They should be thinking about 270, 200 thereabout. So that is how the minimum is being arrived at. Then the policy meeting look at all the submissions, and then it is put into debate. It is voted. What do you want? Because it's a minimum benchmark. Institutions like Nile that wants their own to be high, they don't even need to vote. Whatever you said is your own business. Because they will set their own minimum at whatever they want. The minimum that is announced is not binding on them. Institutions are at liberty to set higher. It's only that you are not to set lower. But you are at liberty to set higher.
Sorry to interrupt. So when Jamb says 150 is the lowest, admissible mark a candidate must obtain, if you get that mark, you issue admission letter to those candidates?
No. It's a minimum.
No.
That mark is just what permits you to compete in some institution. There are institutions that will tell you, look, my minimum is 200.
Yeah.
200 is my minimum. If you don't have 200, don't even look to it. If you're passing on the road and my signboard is this, don't even turn that side. Don't be looking at the other side. And what we do, once that perimeter is set, institution that says, look, their minimum is 200, we yank off anything less than 200. What we are sending to the institution, the number of candidates we are sending that apply to them, will not have anything less than 200. So if you have anything less than 200, your name will not even be in that institution for consideration. That's the mistake people are making. A reasonable number of institutions don't even admit anybody less than 200.
Yeah.
And I keep making reference to Nile University. He said medicine 70-something% score above 300. If you have 150, 180, you have no business in that school at all.
Because in my
I think what they're trying to say is that the minimum any student can have to enter into any university is 150. That is any university. Be it any student that scores below 150 cannot get admission.
You see, let me say this. Let me say this. But institutions anywhere in the world are ranked differently. The impression that we have in Nigeria that, look, all institutions must have the same entry or standard or quality is wrong. If you go to Harvard today, or Oxford, or any of these Ivy Leagues, within the precinct of those universities, there are other universities that are not even known. The condition to enter Harvard is not the same thing with the condition of another university that is just by the side.
Okay.
University will grow based on the way they are, and they will compete and all this thing. For instance, if a university is just coming up today, you wouldn't expect it to begin to set standard like University of Ibadan, ABU, and all those things. They will also grow. So these universities are ranked the way Nile has come to stay over a period of time. They didn't just start today. Where they are today is a product of hard work and all this. And you won't expect the university today. If I set up a university in Abuja today, and I'll begin to look at Nile and say, okay, if Nile say their entry is 200, my own entry must be 200.
Okay, no. let's bring in Professor Dogo, Vice Chancellor Nile University. Tell us, how does this this Jamb policy affect admission into private university, the strategy and the timeline compared to public universities?
In fact, what Jamb is doing is a great job of trying to pull together the number of applicants and ensure fairness with regards to access to quality education. Like he highlighted before Jamb came on board, one candidate can have 5, 6, 7 admissions. And as far as those institutions are concerned, you are their candidate. It only comes when you have to register. Then you discover that this person you've given a place for, it's not there. So to us in the private sector, we are very, very happy with what Jamb is doing. Jamb is conducting a credible exam to serve as a benchmark for us to continue the process of admission. And like you rightly said, every institution has its own, not cutoff point, minimal admissible standard. But what took place at the policy meeting, and that's what happens all the time, is for all the universities to agree, and other stakeholders, that anybody with less than 150, for instance, should not be admitted into a university in Nigeria. That does not mean that anybody with 150 can be will be admitted, no. But then there are some institutions who can accept people with 150, and there's nothing wrong about it. In fact, there are other criteria of assessment that's even added to the Jamb score. For instance, some institutions conduct post-UTME to reassess. And beyond that, like he rightly said, assuming somebody scores 150 in Jamb and have 8 A's in work, and he do a post-UTME and he scores 80%, and your cutoff mark is 150, there's nothing wrong in admitting such a person. And that does not mean that the person is a bad candidate. So exam is not the only yardstick for assessment. It's part of the process of assessment.
But does it reflect the preparedness of our students seeking the academic preparedness? Does that lower admissible mark?
No. Like we said, it's not a lower admissible mark. What we are just trying to say is the fact that universities are different. What we do is all of us come together as vice chancellors, stakeholders, to agree on what will be the minimum for a particular year. If you look at the statistics, in 2015, 2016, for instance, the cutoff mark was 180. In 2017, it dropped. You understand? And it dropped to 120 at one point, then it started rising again. And by 2021, it dropped again to 120. Then 2022, I think it's 120. Then we started going to 140. Last year we were 150. Today we are at 150 again. So the policy meeting actually determines what should constitute a minimum. And there are so many criteria. Like I said, today we have about 209 universities in Nigeria. Before, maybe we just had about 100. So you can understand that universities that started yesterday may not have access to all the best of the best. So if you now make it a straitjacketed thing, that you have to have a particular one to enter, then you'll have chaos. And actually, Jamb was set up to prevent the chaos. So there's coordination. So there's centralized approach to admission. So that if, for instance, Nile University says its minimum entry qualification, as far as Jamb is concerned, is 180. It means that anybody with less than 180 will not be sent to Jamb. In other words, Jamb cannot, in fact, recommend anybody less on CAPS, the centralized admission processing system. So that's what it is. And if an institution says, okay, he can accommodate those with 150 for one reason or the other, then Jamb will allow candidates with that to be accessible by that university. That does not mean that all candidates with 150 will be admitted by that candidate. There are some other people who at home perhaps would have scored 300 and still have applied to that institution. So out of this, they will say their criteria of choosing the best of the best. So what we are just trying to say is that that is the basic minimum acceptable for the year. That does not mean that this year all candidates with 150 will be admitted. That's not it.
Go ahead. For Nile University, it's a private university.
Yeah.
What are the peculiar challenges associated with admission, process?
In fact, we don't have any challenge associated with admission. The guidelines are clear. And as a university that is very responsible, we are compliant with all guidelines set up by the regulatory body. And we work with the regulatory body 24 hours to ensure that we are compliant at every level.
So you feel your carrying capacity all the time? Yeah,
almost all the time we feel our carrying capacity. Sometimes, actually, I think the admission season is perhaps the worst time for the Vice Chancellor because everybody wants to get there. As we are entering here, Fabian was telling me that his friend was calling him from Maiduguri, that he wants to get to Nile, he has scored 300 and all that. And that's not the only person. Since Jamb released the results, in fact, the calls are received almost every day.
So Nile is overwhelmed?
Well, we won't say we're overwhelmed, but we are grateful for the confidence Nigerians have in us to deliver quality education.
Is that how you answer it?
Yes.
So Professor Haruna,
remember, Thanko is waiting.
So how do you ensure that, all universities, public universities apply this policy uniformly?
Well, I think the public universities are at the crossroad now. You see, we have private we also have state. Now for this policy, which has been set for as a guideline, the public universities, those who think they can sit and relax, now they are in competition. You have heard what Nile is doing, all right? So many public universities too are doing great, but the challenge is most of these students also, which the public universities are facing, they are the ones who carry most of the students. The private universities don't carry more than, let me just conservatively, let me say 15%, I don't know, Jamb will have. Most of this pressure goes to the public universities. Now, University of Jos, my university got the prize. I know the VC, what he has been going through now with regard to admission could be very similar to what Dili Dogo is, the VC of Nile. But that does not mean that, you see, when you put these two universities, this one is better than the other. No, they all have their own way of running the system. And candidates are made to come based on the product and the kind of services they provide. So we in the CVC try to reorient our colleagues, our vice chancellors. Nigerians are looking onto us. We are responsible for helping to regulate the higher education system in Nigeria. We are advisory to government one as Minister of Education, NUC, like Jamb is our CVC. And Oloyede is doing great because he is one of the founding fathers of many policies in the CVC-NU, the Committee of Vice Chancellors. And he is one of our great stakeholders, and he is conscious of what we even do in the CVC-NU. So any Vice Chancellor who meets Oloyede, he must go there with the clean hands. Absolutely, yeah, you must go with the clean hands. If not so, you are really going to, you know who the man is. Yeah.
All right.
But one important point I would like to raise here is let us be careful of using language. It's a cut-off point. He has mentioned it. Minimum standard. When people hear this cut-off point, they think that automatically with 150 I can get to any university.
Exactly.
No, but
the cut-off point, sorry, sir, the cut-off point from the people, it emanated from Jamb, because I remember in my days, that was the language.
Fine.
The cut-off point used to be 200.
Fine.
In those days.
You see, language is
so
like
we are
language.
No, they're trying to explain.
I am a linguist. Language is like a rubber. Now, let me use one critical thing. I hope I will not be offensive on this channel.
Please try not to.
Okay, good. Yeah. Many people use terminologies which downgrade some people. There are some ethnic groups, for example, you will give them a name which is not their name, but it's a coinage from another language, but it lowers their standard. I mean, it lowers their own
prestige.
prestige.
Yes.
And this is derogatory. Now, if you use cut-off point 15 years ago, must we continue using cut-off point today? And I think the essence of this kind of conversation is NTA is doing a great job. Now we have moved from cut-off point to minimum admissible standard.
All right.
And I think this is what Nigerians should take along. They shouldn't be looking at Jamb again and say they use this, so we must continue. That is not progress.
So, which means that, just like you said, like we had 200 cut-off points, maybe in the early the early 2000s.
Yes.
But now that we are having 150, does not mean that the standard of education has fallen.
It has not.
That is what
it has not.
And like I wanted to just say that the essence is for Nigerians and the viewer to understand the content and context of that. Yes, whether it is cut off or lowering standards, just understand the wisdom and the reasoning behind that mark. Professor Tanko Ishaya, thank you very much for your patience with us. And well, a happy man would always, be patient. Thank you very much, and congratulations once again for the award of half a billion naira from Jamb for the National Tertiary Admissions Performance Merit Award. But two key areas that struck me in the pillars that was used to measure performance. One is the national spread of admitted candidates, and then the other one is on gender balance. First of all, talk to us on how you feel, and then on these two areas.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me congratulate Jamb and the nation, obviously, for having another very, very successful policy meeting, and like you said, to congratulate the University of Jos for having the highest award during the Jamb policy meeting. I must say that right from when we came on board, one of the main mission that we have set for ourselves was to actually work towards ensuring that our universities are international universities. And for us, in the University of Jos, we looked at, the international parameters. And one thing that was very clear to us was that we didn't have the required number of international students. And how can we run a university without international students? So we started, putting on some strategies towards ensuring that we have international students. We liaise with some of our partners. Let me also thank the Rochas Okorocha Foundation for actually giving us the opportunity to use their foundation to leverage on that. And on the 11th of May, during the Jamb policy meeting, I'm happy to say that and we are glad actually to see that we emerge first as the institution with the highest number of admissions of foreign students. So we can safely say that UniJos is actually a destination for international students at the moment. We emerge first, and then, of course, in line with other criteria that Jamb uses a very, very objective criteria that Jamb uses in order to arrive at the award, is the most compliant university with the 2025 policy guidelines. And in that category also, we came second. And of course, another most important aspect is the most national universities in admission spread. Of course, we also came third, on that. And that led us to where we are. We're very happy, and we thank Jamb for the 500 million support. We're going to utilize that fund, in order to ensure that we continue to improve our admission process. With the national minimum tolerable mark for Jamb that was set up at 150, I think it's a general national standard. And I think it is just providing a global minimum, what we call the minimum cutoff point. That does not mean that every university can actually start admitting students who has 150. I give you an example of the University of Jos. We have over 30,000 candidates that have applied into the 2026 various programs of 2026. Now, we have just a quota of about 10,000. Now, we can't, of course, admit all the 30,000 candidates. And of course, each university has also defined its own standard. For UniJos, for example, we have always used a standard of 180 at the university minimum tolerable cutoff mark as 180, so for all the other courses. But of course, every year, we leave that at the prerogative of Senate to decide based on the number of candidates that have applied and, of course, the number of scores. But I can just give you based on what we did last year, as a simple analysis of what exactly to maintain over 13,000 candidates, to screen for the 10,000 or so slot within the University of Jos. And for example, we can see that medicine and surgery we have over 3,000 candidates who have scored 180 and above. And of course, we have only 150 slots, to admit in medicine and surgery. They have to look at certain criteria. And when we maintain the criteria, for instance, for medicine and surgery of 250, we still have over 400 candidates, to juggle for the 150 space. So each university, of course, has a very admission guidelines, a clear admission criteria. But I must say that the Jamb has brought in, and will continue to keep in, the general admission standard, the criteria, the national admission, criteria, which is obviously a very good one. Like Professor Aruna, the SG of CVCNU, said earlier on. Otherwise, you have universities, probably dealing with the same category of candidates. I can assure you that you will see probably more candidates who will be applying for medicine to University of Jos, and the same candidate may apply for the same course at ABU and so on and so forth. So I think the caps that Jamb has actually provided clarity.
To interrupt you, so we could have enough time to look at, the very fundamental, waivers that came out of the meeting, and I know Demola can't wait for us to look at, why benchmark was lowered for some courses. But I'm just wondering, it's understandable if private universities are able to comply strictly with the rules. But for a public university, federal university, and one that is well sought after at that, of course, in the same vein like University of Lagos and others, I'm just wondering how you are able to maintain this strict compliance amidst pressures, admission pressures, from all quarters.
Yeah, I think the network, I don't know if you can hear me. I think the network is very, very poor.
Yes, we can hear you.
I could only pick up a few things that you said.
I'll repeat my question. I'm saying that for the private universities like now, it's understandable if they're able to maintain or keep, strictly to comply with the rules. But for a public university like University of Jos, in the same category as University of Lagos, maybe Ibadan and others, or Maiduguri and others, I'm just wondering how University of Jos is able to comply strictly with these procedures, with these rules, in the midst of all the pressures, admission pressures from all quarters?
Yeah, it's obviously with respect to pressures, and also in terms of keeping with the admission criteria, we've been facing a lot of we face a lot of pressure from all over Nigeria, from all stakeholders. Who would want specific courses in particular. Pressures, especially in the courses such as medicine and surgery, law, pharmacy, and so on and so forth. But of course, based on the criteria that has been set in Jamb, we need to really adhere to some of these criteria, because Jamb, we also understand that Jamb is monitoring the compliance of some of those criteria, and that is why, for instance, we had to resist on some of the pressure, because one of the things that we have at the back of our mind is that the universities are there for inclusivity. Universities are there for merit. So as far as, if you look at the concern, they are for our younger generation. If we use these two criteria, of course, what means is that we need to ensure that those who merit and go in with the set criteria that we insist those the pressure that we get from other, that criteria for ensuring, for checking and ensuring those that are complying with the policy guidelines for admissions. And the policy guideline is clear. You know, for instance, for each of the courses or each of the programs that students are applied, you are required actually to, you know, to look at 40% of all the applicants, 40% on merit, and irrespective of whatever states that they are actually coming from. You need to really look at that purely on merit. Now, if you go by that, then of course you have a percentage for the catchment, and then you have another percentage for the educationally less disadvantaged states. And those are the main criteria that we are expected to do in order to ensure that the universities, particularly public universities, are national universities, so that, you know, children from all over the country are not disenfranchised with respect to admission process. So, for example, wherever you are coming from, you have higher marks, higher Jamb points, and also the post-UTME. You know, you are guaranteed that you are going to be admitted into certain courses. So we try to deal with some of the pressure in line with the policy guidelines as well.
Very much, Professor Tanko. We'll get back to you because there is a viewer that has sent a question directly to you, but we'll ask that question maybe during the course of this conversation when we get back to you. Let's come back to the studio now. Dr. Fabian, let's look at the mechanism to ensure that CAPS remains fully transparent and tamper-free. What mechanism are Jamb put in place for that?
Well, you see, the system has been there to ensure that equity and fairness prevail in the conduct of admission, because the framers of the General Admissions and Matriculation Board came up with the 3-tier criteria for admission. Just as the VC mentioned, you have the 45% merit, you have the 35% catchment, you have the 20% ELDS. And this is now put into CAPS. Before Professor Loide came into Jamb, admission was done manually. And of course, you could see some of the challenges of manual. You have a printout. Just say they had 30,000. We have a university with 100,000 applicants. You know, we have 200, over close to 300 universities now. And then you are less than that. So you have many, you know, so you have a printout like it's as bulky as this. You begin to mark manually, page by page, and, you know, a lot of mistakes are here and there. And it's even difficult for you to monitor, because even if they put you to say, okay, monitor this exercise to see how transparent it is, because you start going through page 1 to 1,000 number of pages and candidates and also. So CAPS came into being in 2017, and all those things were phased out. These criteria are lumped into CAPS. Okay. I also want to use the opportunity to make a particular correction that, look, Jamb does not do admission. Many people feel that, Jamb is something that somebody say university, we reject admission and all this. And there is nothing like that. There is nothing about rejection, because the university does the admission. So you cannot reject what you have done. The only thing that Jamb does is to sit down like a referee and watch whatever is happening there. As it is today, even if the registrar has a child that wants to go to a particular university, Nile University, he cannot put that child into that university. Rather, maybe he will talk with a VC. That is just how it is done. It is only the university, the admission officer, that will make this proposal, and the VC recommends to Jamb, and the Jamb looks at it and see, okay, it has met all the perimeter that is being defined by the university. The university would have given us, this is what we want. The man must be tall, short, fair, dark, you know, that kind of big eyes and stuff like that. And then when you send the list to us, it must conform with what, you cannot change the goalpost in the middle of the game. That's the essence of Jamb. To ensure that institutions don't change the goalpost in the middle of the game. Even if your father is a governor, and you don't meet the laid down criteria, 45% is merit, and merit is merit, even if those children come from the same family. If once they meet the 45%, it's color-coded, and the first 45% candidates, it has its own color. Those ones automatically. Then it comes to the 35%, which is catchment. And you know, people will tell you, oh, like which day a particular TV station will say, this federal character, admission sponsor, and somebody coming from here, that is not how it is done. Even the federal, the 35%, the federal character, whatever principle, the affirmative action, you must meet the minimum requirement. For instance, for medicine, if in our university say, okay, their medicine is 270, you cannot come in with 200 or 190 because you're coming from wherever. Yes, you must meet, because even those people that meet the minimum requirement is still very competitive. So you must meet that minimum requirement. And affirmative action is everywhere in the world. My former registrar, Professor Dibo Jordan, went to University of Cornell, not because of any, but at the point they felt that, look, we don't have enough black, that kind of people from Africa and all these things. And somebody said, not to him, look, and that's why he was given a scholarship to go and read PhD at the University of Cornell. So affirmative action is, even in Harvard today, if Harvard wakes up and discovers that there's nobody from Africa in the whole year, I believe they will fly to somewhere and get people, even by giving them scholarships, they come and study in Harvard and so like that. So it's done elsewhere. And that's what we're also doing.
Prof, I want to ask, do universities have support system for some students that are qualified but they did not meet the minimum requirement? Is there any support system for them?
Well, you see, once there is a minimum requirement, let us not make the mistake that we will go below it. Even if we give you support, you must meet the standard. No university will like to discredit its own name because they want to be Father Christmas. It's very, very important. He mentioned like some universities will admit because they have requirements. I have barrage of universities from abroad on my table now seeking to come into Nigeria, and they are looking to be advised which university can we go and work with. And these are the various support systems. Now, I don't own a university as Secretary General, but then all the universities are within my domain. So I reach out to vice to say, here are offers. Can you cash on it? Because if it doesn't meet what they want, they will not just dish it out to him or her. Now, this is very, very important. So no university will admit just on sympathy. They admit because you qualified. Because these products, they are coming to be recycled in the society. Imagine you admit a candidate to read medicine on sympathy just because there is some kind of affirmative action somewhere. He will kill people afterwards. He will kill people. So let me put that in clear. But before we go there are a few phrases. You see, I commend NTA. When we are in a forum like this, it's educative. Absolutely. And the words we use for Nigerians out there must be very, very clear. The Jamb brother said merit. Everybody understands merit. But there is catchment area. What does catchment area means when you are doing admission? Each university is located within a particular geopolitical zone or within an area. And sometimes there are issues that are looked up and say, well, this university, can you accommodate this particular community or zones or some states? Because they are just adjacent to where the university is. I think that's what they mean. He can expand on that.
Absolutely.
Then there is another vocabulary used, educationally less developed areas, ELDS. What does ELDS mean? You will find that there is a state whereby even if you want to get 1,000 students from there, you may not get them. There are some states, you need 1,000, you'll get 5,000. Now, the way to encourage them is to give them this national visibility. And you go there and really hunt and poach for students to come to universities. So this is just a little comment I would like to add.
Thank you. Sorry, but
in that instance,
sorry.
You have a low. Okay.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I wanted to, before we bring in the
okay. In that instance, when you have some states that they have low students coming from that particular region or that area, do you lower the admission, minimum admission point for them?
No, it's still lowering. You see, it is not lowered. Once we use the word lowered, people will think education again is lowered. You see, what means they can be admitted as long as they meet this minimum admissible standard, but they will be given visibility. I was the vice chancellor at the Federal University Geshua. I needed students from Ebonyi, for example. And then there are students I will need from Zamfara. I may get 1,000 students from perhaps Ekiti State, but I may not get 2 from Ebonyi, most likely. So you see, I went out hunting for them. Here are opportunities, but they will be admitted not less than the minimum standard. But if there are people coming from the other states with higher number, where I need maybe 180, but you can go to that state and get almost all of them 200. So a student from one particular state will be admitted with 180, which is my minimum admissible standard. But a student from another state may not be admitted with 200. So this is the kind of encouragement that you get. And parents will come and say, my child has 300. Why was he not admitted? Now this is where the admission officer or the university takes into cognizance this criteria, merit, catchment area, and educationally less developed states.
Dr. Fabian, quickly, I mean, time is far gone, and we haven't even scratched the outcomes. The Jamb letter you give to candidates, briefly, before I ask the question on the waiver, what does that signify, the admission? Because every candidate must have a letter from you before even approaching the school of choice. What does that letter indicate? What does it mean for that candidate?
Well, for a candidate to be admitted, to be presumed admitted, he must have a Jamb admission letter. And once you print the admission letter, first of all, you accept an admission, and then you print the admission letter. Your name automatically move to where?
Your school of choice.
No, already you're from the examination. You're already in your school of choice.
Okay.
Though you are at liberty to move anytime you want to move, based on whatever. If you look at the competition and you feel that you're not standing in a very good position, you can move to anywhere you want to move to. But what defines you as an admitted candidate institution is you accepting that admission and then printing your admission letter. Once you print your admission letter, your name is locked into the institution. At that point, once you accept admission, you cannot move again. You can't move to another institution. You are assumed, for instance, I pick University of Jos Mechanical Engineering, and then the admission officer proposes me, the VC recommends to Jamb approves. You accept, then you print your admission letter. Once you print your admission letter, confirm you are admitted. And that explains why most candidates will tell you, look, I don't have a letter. And you ask him, go and check your admission status. He gets there, he sees that he's not admitted. But it's already in the institution. These are things that CAPS is there to address.
Yes, because I was also going to ask you to explain this CAPS, how it works. But let me talk about this waiver for certain courses, Greek, NCE holders, certain, diploma, yes, holders, and all that. And I'm just wondering the intent of that beyond widening access, for increasing, teachers and all that. Because are we prioritizing quantity over quality?
No, education has a way of addressing so many things, so many that time will not even allow us to mention. One, you will notice that Prof just said something that a lot of universities are coming to Nigeria trying to see how they can pick our candidates and all this. There was a time that Nigeria was among the highest countries that people move out, that kind of a thing for tertiary education.
Yeah.
That number is reducing. You have the challenge of out-of-school children. That is also there. There are so many challenges that this policy is to address. But behind the dream or the idea is the issue of demand and supply. If demand was high, nobody would have even contemplated that policy.
Demand for
NC education, demand for non-technological agricultural programs. If it were high, nobody will even think of that. But you have a situation whereby you go to a college of education, the only way they can admit candidates is to do admission under the table. Because the candidate that applies to them, as we're talking today, no college of education in Nigeria admits up to 50% of its carrying capacity. They have the capacity there, especially federal government colleges of education that government is funding. Infrastructure has been expanded by TED Fund and other intervention funds and stuff like that, but no students to cater for the school.
So this is to address that.
This will not address.
What about the quality, of the outcome?
We are looking at quality from the wrong perspective.
All right.
UTME, I've told you earlier, the quality starts from the SSC. If you have a system that is working and a candidate has 4 or 5 credits, you have a credit A1 mathematics, A1 in English, it should be able to survive anywhere.
All right, Dr. Fabian, thank you for the clarification. We'll just have to pause you there because we need to go on a break. Already we have a lot of questions and comments from our viewers. All this we'll read out. Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And our discussion is still on the outcome of the Jamb policy meeting. Our guests are still here, and we have a lot of questions and comments from our viewers, which we'll just read out some of them now so that they can respond to it. This one is for James Bassi. James Bassi is from Abuja. He says, please, why the yearly ritual meetings of VCs, rectors, and provosts just to determine the cutoff marks for admission into universities for the year? Why must the yardstick be changed on a yearly basis? The frequency of this ritual is too short. Anyway, maybe Dr. Fabian will respond to that. Good morning. My sister registered for Jamb, and unfortunately, over 30 of them in their center couldn't write due to system failure. They were asked to wait until the others are done writing, then they will reschedule theirs, but to no avail. It's worrisome. This one is from Joel Sambo. He says, I don't understand the cutoff mark issue because Jamb cutoff point is different from cutoff or department cutoff points. For instance, University of Jos benchmark is 180. The cutoff point for business, management, accounting, law, mass comm, and other courses is 220. Well, maybe Professor Tanko will respond to that. This one says, good morning. My son got 188 in Jamb and wants to read nursing or pharmacy. Can he get it with that score? Well, the last one is, can the VC University of Jos counter the fact that admissions in the highly sought-after courses like medicine and surgery and law is for the highest bidders? Maybe we'll go straight to Professor Tanko to respond to, because 2 or 3 of these questions are actually directed to him. Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much. If I get you correctly, there are two main questions. Like I earlier explained, and the person that asked whether courses such as medicine and law are for the highest bidder, that is not correct. The courses for medicine and surgery are for students who has demonstrated capacity to read those courses. And that is one of the reasons why we, as a University of Jos, is the university actually that makes admission, the process admissions. And the admission process, because it's an academic matter, it's a prerogative of the University Senate. So before we come out with any tolerable cutoff marks, we have a meeting of Senate. And because of the peculiarity of those courses and the requirements that the faculty expects that candidates have, that is what usually lead to a differentiated cutoff mark. So although we say that the general cutoff mark for any student to enter the University of Jos is 180, each faculty decides on what it believes is the minimum or should be the minimum tolerable cutoff mark for that particular course. And for example, medicine and surgery will say, we actually expect to see some candidates from 200 that has 250 and above. And like I said earlier on, even if we take the candidates that have scored 200 and above, we have enough, pool to be able to process admissions into that particular program. If we say we are actually going to look at the university cutoff mark, which is 180, like I said earlier on, we have already analyzed our data, and we have over 3,000 candidates that has 180 and above who want to study medicine. Now, medicine is only 150 that we have at the moment. You can imagine what it will take to process 3,000 candidates, to pick 150. Of course, merit will have to come in, because university is a system of meritocracy. So that is one of the reasons why, higher cutoff marks are defined for those courses, such as the medicine and surgery, law, and so on and so forth. And let me just make very clarity. There is no course that is defined, for particular individuals. Like I said earlier on, Jamb has defined, in agreement with all of us, defined the criteria for admission. For merit, we admit 45% of all the candidates, of the candidates. So, for example, if I am to admit 100 students in a particular course, the first best 45 students will go on merit, and wherever you come from, and whatever background you are coming from. The first 45 students, which is 45%. Now, the next set that we look at is obviously the catchment that we are required to actually use 35% of the admission criteria, the admission, to cover. So 35% or 35 candidates out of 100 candidates will be from the catchment state. So, for example, UniJOS has 7 catchment states. So if we have 35 candidates, we are expected to distribute these 35 candidates across the 7 catchment states. And these 7 catchment states were required to pick the best candidates from these catchment states, not just pick the candidates at random. There has to be the best, those that scores higher, and that is the aggregate of both the Jamb score and also that of the post-UTME screening that we do. And then, of course, the last 20%, which is the educationally disadvantaged states. Again, this has been defined, as all the northern states and other states from the south. So there's no particular course that is defined for a particular category of Nigerians. Every course is defined for every student, but and most importantly, students who demonstrate, that they have the capacity and they have the merit, to be able to undergo those particular courses.
Well, Professor Ishaya, thank you. There's a comment here from, I can't see his name. He says, I think 40% or 45% based on merit is too low, as this means majority of the admissions are not on merit. I believe the merit percentage should be increased to at least 55%, but ideally 70%. Catchment and the ELDs can share the remaining 30%. But I'll let you think about this. Maybe if we come back to you, you can also. But let me bring the conversation now to Professor Dilitogo here. And the waiver, the removal of UTME for NCE holders and other incidents. Might there be other spillover effects to other agencies like the NYSC, for instance, and the NTI?
Well, I don't see it that way. I think this has been well thought through by the Ministry of Education, like it's highlighted here. If you have a federal government establishment established by law to make impact, and there are no students, you have to find ways of bringing students or encouraging people to come into the system. And beyond that, NCE, for instance, is like a step in the educational ladder. We have, for instance, those who go to School of Basic Studies, they don't go through Jamb, all right? And they don't have to write UTME. What do? They go through direct entry. By the time you finish NCE, if you want to do a degree program, you go through direct entry. So I think the NCE program can be seen as part of an incubation process to higher degrees. And then subjecting them to Jamb screening at this point when there are very few students who are interested. And after, again, still have to go there. It becomes a challenge. So I think the intention is to encourage people to go into those kind of institutions so that we can have more teachers. A lot of the teachers, like our colleague here just said, especially in the private secondary schools or private primary schools, are not qualified. Yet we have institutions set up by government to ensure that qualified teachers are made to power these institutions. So government must find a way of encouraging people to go to these colleges of education so that we can have qualified teachers, people who are trained. And like it has been highlighted here over and over again, the Jamb exam is just part of a screening process. And it's not clad in such a way that, okay, if you do not get this particular one, or if you don't go through the college of education through Jamb, it's a substandard. That's not the point. The point is to ensure that colleges of education have the critical pool of people who can be encouraged to go and become mentored as good teachers, and that's the intention.
All right,
yeah.
All right, Prof. Thank you, but I will still expand on that. But Secretary, there's a question for you.
Okay.
Yes, and this question is very fundamental.
Yeah.
It says, can vice chancellors continue paying the new salary component of 2025 agreement on their own from funds inside the university?
Well, I've said several. Well, honestly speaking, if you know what vice chancellors are going through as vice chancellors of an institution, you must sympathize with them. Payment, you see, for those who are in public schools, you see, vice chancellors don't generate money. You see, the salaries, allowances, or whatever is something that comes from government budget. Within, I have said it in one of the interviews here, vice chancellors, whatever they generate inside, people see it like IGR, internally generated revenue. This is not internally generated revenue. These are money collected from students for specific services. And vice chancellors who are in public institutions, now public institutions, they are different from private. They are funded from government budget. So if government does not provide the funds, I think we should understand that vice chancellor has no way of generating funds to pay salaries. He can provide certain money through research and through other things, but these are specifically for those subheads for which these monies have been brought into the university. So this is what I can say on this. But before I conclude, on this aspect, people at this stage, I want all Nigerians to really pray for vice chancellors at this season. The season of admission is what set them wild. They don't have answers to all things, but they must still provide solutions to what is available.
All right, thank you. Let me quickly take the other questions. Yes. This is from Nanda Uye from Jos. Why can't Jamb conduct its examinations in individual secondary schools just like WAEC and SSCE? Why aren't Jamb results valid for more than 1 year? And when he or she meets the lowest minimum admission marks, though not given admission or course of choice. Again, this is from Good Morning Presenters, your guest in the studio. What effort is Jamb making to come up with a standard policy that will not be changed or tampered with by any new Minister of Education in Nigeria? Alhaji Gariko Karusite in Abuja. The recent Jamb policy meeting retained 150 as minimum cutoff mark for universities, reaffirmed 16 years as the admission age. The board also emphasized transparency through CAPS admission system. With these policies, while these policies are important, government must also focus more on expanding admission opportunities and improving the quality of tertiary education in Nigeria. Mohammed Issa O from Kotenkarfe in Kogi State. This is from Francis DKD. A parent much interested in this topic. The daughter partook in the just concluded exam, UTME exam. Result is yet to be released because she's adjudged underage. I think Professor Oloyede, yes, did explain the issue of underage in the last years. And this one says. Okay, I've said this before. I think those are all.
Maybe Dr. Fabian
yes,
should respond.
Thank you very much. The issue of validity, of course, if government decide that that is the way to go, we're not averse to that. But don't forget that there is no selection examination that lasts more than. 1 year. It's never done anywhere. And what we do, we don't operate in isolation. Is the principle of measurement, psychometrics, and theories and all those things. So if you want the examination to last more than 1 year, what that means is that you have to change the entire architecture. The WAEC, the NECO examination that lasts more than 1 year, don't forget they have continuous assessment component from SS1. You start building into the examination up to when you're writing the final SSC and all this. And what we do is just a 2 hours interaction with the candidate. All this responsibility that is placed on Jam's shoulder, whether we are lowering, we are hiring, we are whatever it is an interaction that we had with this candidate for 2 hours maximum. Meanwhile, the candidate is in Sonoran School for 6 years, and nobody's been talking about what happens there. But this 2 hours interaction that Jamb has with the candidate is what everybody is emphasizing. That is that. The issue of examination, whether writing, we are going to conduct another mop-up examination. What we do yearly is that at the end of the exercise, we sit down and look at where candidates, some of them, centers could not write, very negligible number, but we'll do what we call a mop-up, maybe sometimes this month for such candidate. And then on the issue of waiver and all this thing, I think the minister is doing so much. Nigerians should just wait. Prof said something here that, look, to address this problem is not from Jamb. You have to go back to see how you can encourage people to come into teacher education, to come into technological education and stuff like that. Technological agriculture, some of these programs and so. You have to go back to see how you can bring policy. And I trust the minister. I know that he has a lot of things that he's doing and all this. Somebody talked about policy, a minister will come and change policy. This minister has made it clear that, look, his administration is 80% implementation, 20% policy. Most of the things he's doing is implementing what has been on ground. The laws are there. It's not that nobody cares. And I tell somebody, I said, look, if you want to make a law so that people will only be moving with their head upside down, if you check the status, the Nigerian books, you will see that the law has been made for that already. There is nothing in Nigeria that has not been legislated upon. What the minister is only doing is ensuring that, look, we must enforce what is right. He's courageous. He's bold enough to say, look, the right thing must be done. Maybe perhaps 20% of some of those things that he's doing are what new policy and so on. About 80% are implementation of policy that has been pronounced by his predecessors, that he came into office and he made them on ground, ensuring that these things must be done and stuff like that. So basically, these are issues that questions that they've raised here. I don't know whether I've answered.
Sorry, Demola. I understand the wisdom behind the waiver. What happens in the event that your expectations are not met? Is there likely to be another policy reversal? That's one. And what safeguards do you think regulators like the NUC and the teachers, TRCN, can put in place to ensure compliance?
You see, the minister didn't just wake up and say, oh, look, let's waive this. He looked at a lot of parameters. One of the issues is this. Day in, day out, he keeps receiving requests for condonment, what people call regularization. These colleges keep sending lists of candidates that they've admitted outside Jamb. And you look at the number kept increasing. That, look, year in, year out, they admit candidates that didn't sit for Jamb, and then they keep asking for, Minister, can you give us waiver to regularize these admissions and stuff like that? And he called them and said, okay, what is the problem? And the stakeholder came to say, oh, look, if we must abide by the laid down rules and regulations, we wouldn't even have candidates. And that is why at times when we are under pressure, we go outside the norms to admit these candidates. And that was the beginning of the thoughts that, okay, what do we do to ensure that we address this shortfall? To bring up this candidate for several reasons. If we must also address the out-of-school children, we have slot there that, okay, bring this candidate in. What we do is that, restricting the curriculum, see how you can make them better, even those ones that are a little bit weak and all this, make them strong and all this. And he made it in such a way that, look, by the time you come in at NC level and you do very well, you have your entry requirement and stuff like that, you could just progress without any break to your degree program. That is actually the basis, the beginning, the essence of NC program, even in those days, for you to do NC and then move forward to read your degree. So these are things that gave the background that gave him the impetus to say, okay, if this is what people are doing, why do we deceive ourselves? Because I'm in issue where we're not deceiving ourselves. Don't like people will tell you, in those days, the cut-off point was 180 and 200. There was nothing like that. Because the universities, the institution were not even abiding by it. They were admitting under the table. So they will just come out and then the policy meeting, make pronouncement, please everybody, Nigerians will be very happy and all this, and then they will go back and be admitting under the table, by admitting people that are even scholars and that. And I believe this is what people want us to do. But the minister said, no, look, no. I must, as a minister, I will sit down to enforce this rule. That is why, okay, if there are challenges, bring them on the table. Let us sit down and look at it and see how we can make it work. So now, the system we are operating now is that the minimum requirements must be adhered to. You cannot, by any way, go below whatever is agreed at that policy meeting. Universities, just as I've told you, they have different ranking. I have a new university in my state, in UQ, that just came on board. Of course, you won't expect them to have the same entry requirement with university that is 10 years, 20 years, or 40 years.
Yes,
I guess
I think we have to just round up now because of time. Maybe you should just do that.
Yes, all right. Let's of course appreciate our guest. It's a very deep conversation. We cannot end all the issues raised at the meeting in just one program, and I do believe that Professor Fabian would agree with me.
No, Professor.
We should have
Doctor.
Yes, Doctor.
Thank you for the promotion.
Yes, Dr. Fabian. Yes, we will come back and look at other outcomes from the meeting. Thank you, Dr. Fabian, for joining us for this conversation. SecGen, I call you. Professor Aruna, thank you very much for joining us.
Permit me to say a word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, first, I would like to congratulate Jamb for a successful policy meeting. Thank you. Two, I would like to also congratulate my University of Jos, for getting 500 million. I will also want to congratulate NTA for taking topical issues at the very right time to get Nigerians aware. Lastly, to congratulate CVC, which is the body that created Jamb.
All right.
And pray for my vice chancellor.
I hope NTA too will stand a chance of winning $500 million someday. Professor Adili Dogo, thank you. Via VC, of course, of Nile University. We'd like to thank you. Professor Tanko Ishaya, we appreciate you that you're able to join us from Jos and keep doing the good work. Thank you. And that's all on Good Morning Nigeria for today. We thank you for joining us. Just to say that you can also join us or follow us on Facebook at NTA News 24. You can also watch us live on YouTube at nta.ng/watch/live/NTA News 24.
And some of the discussion on the Jamb that we had,
yes,
like the before Jamb exam and after the Jamb exam, some are asking questions. They can go on YouTube
absolutely
for those, and they will get answers to those questions. Thank you, Claire, for coming today. I am Ademola Adeye. Thank you and have a lovely day.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdurrazak. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.